Here is something nobody at a financial summit will say into a microphone. The global economy right now looks stable. Growth is positive in most major economies. Unemployment numbers are holding. Stock markets are not in free fall. And if you read the headlines, things seem manageable. Uncomfortable maybe, but manageable. But there is a version of 2026 that almost nobody is talking about publicly. Not because it is a secret, but because the people who understand it have no real incentive to say it clearly, and the people who should be explaining it are still using the language of 2019. So let us talk about what is actually happening, not the version designed to keep you calm, the real one. Start with debt. Not your debt, everyone's debt. In 2024, global debt hit a number so large it barely registers as meaningful anymore. $315 trillion. That's more than 3 times the entire economic output of every country on Earth combined. And here's the part that matters. A significant portion of that debt was borrowed when interest rates were sitting near zero. Governments, corporations, households, all of them locked in cheap borrowing because cheap borrowing felt like it would last forever. It did not. Between 2022 and 2024, central banks around the world raised interest rates at the fastest pace in 4 decades. The logic was straightforward. Inflation was running hot. You raise rates, you cool spending, you bring prices down. Textbook stuff. But here's what the textbook does not always mention. When you raise rates that fast, you don't just slow down the economy, you also change the cost of every single debt that needs to be refinanced. And in 2025 and 2026, an enormous wave of that cheap-era debt is coming due. Companies that borrowed at 2% now have to refinance at 6 or 7. Governments that issued bonds at near zero yields now have to roll them over at rates that cost real money. The math that made sense in 2021 no longer works in 2026. And that gap, that difference between what was promised and what is now owed, is quietly reshaping everything. Now add something most people don't think about until it's already hurting them: the consumer. For the past 2 years, consumer spending in the United States and across much of Europe has remained surprisingly resilient. Economists pointed to this as a sign of strength. People are still spending. The economy is holding up. Nothing to worry about. But look at how people were spending. Credit card debt in the U.S. crossed $1.1 trillion in 2024. Buy now, pay later usage exploded across every income bracket. Personal savings rates fell back to levels not seen since just before the 2008 financial crisis. People were not spending because they felt wealthy. They were spending because they felt behind, and credit made it feel possible. That works until it doesn't. When the bill comes due on that kind of spending, it doesn't come with a warning. It comes quietly, in the form of missed payments, rising delinquencies, and a sudden pullback in consumption that hits corporate revenue without any single dramatic headline to explain it. That's already beginning in 2026. The delinquency numbers on auto loans and credit cards started climbing in late 2024. They have not stopped.